What's going on, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we're back with another fight breakdown this weekend, this Saturday on dazn. Right, Golden Boy Promotions. Vergil Ortiz Jr. is going to be facing Serhii Bohachuk, and this is going to be for the WBC interim title at 154. Before I even get started, I just want to remind you guys that this fight is going to be a really good fight. I know everyone is talking about Canelo, Crawford, Belenga, Benavidez, and all of that. Don't miss out on this fight. All right, I will be doing live commentary, but this matchup is a phenomenal matchup. Two guys with both of them combined nearly perfect KO ratio from both. All right, nearly perfect. Vergil Ortiz, 21 wins with 21 knockouts, no losses, no draws. He's 26 years old. And you have Serhii Bohachuk, who's 29 years old with 24 wins, 23 by knockout, only one defeat, no draws, okay? He went the distance for the first time in his pro career in his very last fight against Mendoza, which was probably the best fight in his career up to this point, all right? So, look, there are a lot of unknowns, okay? And I've been delaying this breakdown because it's one of those kind of fights where I'm not completely sure. At one point, I was confident that Virgil would win this fight, but I'm not so confident because I've gone back and I rewatched certain fights, and I'm at a point where I'm not completely sure because there are some unknowns here. And even though both of these guys are KO artists, I believe that both of these guys are fighting their most dangerous opponent to date in this fight here. And again, there are additional unknowns, especially with Vergil Ortiz. We might as well start with him. Now, Vergil has been mainly a guy that fought at 140 and then 147. He was coming off of some of his best wins at 147 before stepping up to 154. Okay, he beat Maurice Hooker, who was a former champion at 140, and then he went on to fight Eggy Stanionis. Not Stanionis, Eggy Kavalaskis. I'm going to bring up Stanionis in a minute. He went on to fight Kavalaskis and won by knockout. I think he stopped him one round earlier than Crawford did in a very good competitive fight, a fight that Vergil actually got hurt at some point early in that fight. All right, and then he went on to beat Michael McKenzie, who was not a big puncher, but a very good mover and counter puncher. All right, went on to that and did that. Now, Vergil has had some health issues, okay, and it's delayed some fights here. He was supposed to fight Imantas Stanionis, and both of at the time, both of them two undefeated fighters, still undefeated at 147, to the top of their game, and because of injuries on both sides, delayed the fight. And Vergil took a break from boxing for a little bit. All right, went on 2 years, almost nearly 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years without a fight. All right. He moves up to 154, but he's fighting at catch weights above 154. He's fighting at 155, at 156. He fights Frederick Lawson, then goes on to fight Tomas Dulorme, who is not a 154 fighter. And he stops both of these guys in one round. So even though he dusted some of the ring rust off, he got 2 fights at 154 against guys that are not close to being elite super welterweights, and stopped them both in the first round. So, yes, he's been active, but not really. Not against some real top-tier guys, against the guys he was fighting at 147, who was much better than these guys. And he hasn't fought a real 154 fighters, and he has not fought and made the 154 weight limit. So, these are some of the unknowns here that we have with Vergil because, again, hasn't been that active, only fought 2 rounds in the past 2 years, hasn't fought any real 154 fighters, and hasn't even made the 154 weight limit on his return due to his health issues, right? So there's a lot of unknowns here, all right, when it comes to him taking this fight. And Bohachuk is probably the most dangerous fighter. I would say before this was Kavalaskis for sure, but I think Bohachuk has a lot more to offer going into his fight than Kavalaskis did in their fight, all right? Even though they were big punchers, Bohachuk is a proven 154 guy. He's a career for the most part, he's a career 154. He did have some fights on 147. All right, but yeah, so that is with Virgil. As far as the style, if you haven't seen him fight before, Virgil is a pressure fire, volume puncher, but not in a sense like Bohachuk. I think Virgil is probably a bigger puncher, where he stopped guys off one shot. Volume, but a little bit more calculated in his punches. Again, has a phenomenal jab. I think he's a little bit more athletic as well. I think if he's in the right position, close range, we get a little bit more angles from him too. And he's more of a combination puncher. You know, I mean, both are combination punchers, but I think Virgil is much quicker and in his combinations than Bohachuk, and I think he's more of a counter puncher as well. The Bohachuk, I think Bohachuk is more of a volume puncher and a little less calculated. But I'm gonna hold off to that because I have seen improvements with Serhii in his most recent fights. All right, but Virgil Ortiz, phenomenal jab, very powerful jab, quick hands, a little bit more athletic, fights out of high guard most of the time, but he moves his upper body and his head a little bit more than Bohachuk. Okay, so, you know, I think really mainly as far as flaws, I would probably say defensive flaws, fighting out of the high guard, definitely body's exposed a little bit, definitely can land some punches through the guard and around it, throws, gets a little reckless at times with his combinations, definitely can counter him and time him in between punches. I think when he gets hit with a good shot, he gets a little reckless, tries to get you back. I was saying this recently about Jared Anderson. You know, I think when Virgil gets caught with a good shot, he wants to retaliate right away, especially when the crowd reacts. I think he wants to get you back right away, and I think he leaves himself open for even more counters. All right, so I think those are some of the few. I think sometimes he'll use a cross guard with his backhand, and, you know, if you throw a lead left hook, you can kind of catch him on the right side of his face if, you know, he's not careful. He's an orthodox guy, so he uses his backhand to cross guard sometimes, and you could catch him there, but he doesn't do it that much often. Usually high guard, but a lot more upper body and head movement, okay? But you could still catch him with a jab in between the guard, catch him with an uppercut on the, you know, through the guard as well. Catch him to the body, you know what I mean? And you can time him for a good counter. He lunges at time. He doesn't have the longest reach. He has a shorter reach here in this fight. So sometimes he can lunge, especially with the jab. He might be a little bit outside of range, but for the most part, he likes to wait and step in with that jab when he's in close range, all right? Close mid-range. You know, I think that's where he is excellent at. And he has shown us that he can fight on the back foot. You know, I've seen him against Maurice Hooker fight a little bit from the back foot. You know, it's not, even though he's a volume pressure fighter, it's not like he loves to come forward. He likes to be the dominant fighter. But I've seen him fight on the back foot at times as well, and look to set up traps and stuff. So that's pretty much his style. But he's very, very aggressive. You know, takes a very aggressive approach with a mix of counter punching. All right. Serhii Bohachuk, though, he's a little different in his approach. Again, another big puncher, but more of a guy that's beats you off volume and pressure. Not as calculated as Virgil Ortiz. I don't believe he's as good of a counter puncher, but he is a pretty good counter puncher. Likes to be taller and rangier here than Virgil, but this guy can fight out of the outside, has a good jab as well. Throws a lot of jab. I don't think he's as powerful of a jabber and as quick as Virgil is, but I think Serhii is more of a mid-range, close-range guy. You know, I think he likes to throw his combinations when he's closer. And, you know, him as well, I think, you know, when he got stopped by Brandon Adams, got caught with a good shot in between his combinations. But at that point, he's improved since that knockout, and I think I might as well talk about that knockout. In that fight, he was winning the entire fight. I think it was just one of those perfect shots that Brandon landed, and Bohachuk didn't really recover well from that. I think he got dropped, got back up, still wasn't fully recovered, and took a loss. But for what I've seen in him, he's a lot more defensive. He's a lot more cautious, especially throwing combinations. He keeps his hands up. He fights out of a high guard as well. But he's prepared about with what's getting thrown back at him while he's being the aggressor. He's keeping his hands up, and he's just not recklessly throwing combinations like he was in a Brandon Adams fight. Even leading up, if you watch the fight leading up to that stoppage, Serhii was just kind of keeping his hand. He was just being so dominant and being the larger man with the bigger punch. And you can just tell him being so dominant in the fight, he wasn't really concerned about the counter, and I've seen him fight since then. And the way he keeps his hands up, he throws a punch, but he brings it right back up high because he's concerned. I've seen guys try to land like Brian Mendoza in his last fight. I've seen Brian try to connect with that left hook counter, and he did at times, but I've seen Serhii bring that right hand right back and keep that hand high, and tight, that guard tight. And Brian Mendoza would get blocked often when he was fighting Bohachuk in that fight. So he's definitely improved defensively since that. Still a volume puncher, still definitely leads openings there, especially with the uppercut. And I think Mendoza in that fight landed a lot of uppercuts through the guard of Bohachuk, and that's definitely a punch that Ortiz specializes in. So you can definitely guarantee that Ortiz is going to go for that shot. But, Bohachuk, one thing about him is when he gets caught with a good shot, he kind of resets himself, and I think that comes with the maturity and experience he has, especially by getting stopped early in his career. He gets caught with a good shot, he kind of backs up, resets himself. Whereas Vergil, I think when Vergil gets good with a good shot, hit with a good shot, he kind of wants to keep fighting, So I think, Bohachuk, I'm not sure exactly what approach he's going to come here, because I think one of the unknowns here with him is that I haven't really seen him fight on a back foot. And being that Vergil is a guy that likes to come forward as well, Virgil's going to be coming forward. He's going to be attacking the body a lot. That may leave openings for Bohachuk, because if he's starting to drop his guard some to protect his body, that's when Virgil likes to really attack up top. All right. Now, Bohachuk does the same thing. He does like to go to a body as well, but I think Virgil is just a little bit more lethal body puncher, and he likes to throw combos there, which leaves him open to get caught with a shot up top, because his upper body, his head is going to be exposed by going to the body. But that's what he likes to do. He wants you to drop your guard, especially if you're going to be fighting out of high guard like Bohachuk does. So there are a lot of unknowns. And with Bohachuk, it's more about what happens if he is forced to fight on his back foot. What happens if he gets hurt? With a good shot here, will he be in trouble? Those are the questions that I have here. As far as him getting stopped as well, even though it was against Brandon Adams and it was kind of shocking, Brian Mendoza is a bigger puncher. And Brian Mendoza landed a lot more clubbing shots in their fight. And he seemed to take those punches well. So I don't want to take the fact that he got stopped as him being chinny. I think he just got caught with the perfect shot, and it is what it is. But I don't want to look at him and view him as a chinny guy, because, again, Brian Mendoza is a puncher, and he's a very good counter puncher as well. But the only thing is, I don't think Mendoza let his hands go nearly as much as Virgil does. Virgil may arguably be the bigger puncher. We just don't know, because at 154, we haven't seen him against a real top fighter yet, you know, not a real like top 20, 25 guy. You know, the guys he fought at 154, those wins really don't prove nothing, especially when you haven't made the weight yet at 154, the weight limit. So we don't really know. You know, there are a lot of unknowns. All right. Look, as far as the options for this fight, this is not a fight that I'm solely confident on, and this is not a fight that I'm looking to place any bets on. You know, I'm gonna be honest. I'm probably gonna sit this one out, just because I'm just not sure. Bohachuk is the underdog here, and I do think he has a chance to win. I think if he does win, I think it's just based on volume. I think if he's able to back up Ortiz and, you know, let Ortiz, and I think this is where Bohachuk will have success. If he's able to just come forward, not heavy volume early on, but just enough to make Ortiz let his hands go, burn himself out. Bohachuk has a way of applying pressure without throwing that much in the earlier rounds. And I mean, I'm talking about like the first round or two. Okay, Bohachuk might be coming forward, but outside of a jab, he's not really letting his hands go. If Virgil is going to start blowing off his load early on, that could be troublesome, because even though Virgil has a great engine, we don't know how his engine is going to be at 154. And not only that, he does fight in spurts. He does take rounds off. You know, if you watch carefully, some of the rounds where Maurice had some success is when Virgil was kind of taking off some of the round in some of those periods in that fight. So Virgil, yes, high volume, but he does take off some rounds. Bohachuk needs to let his hands go and capitalize off it later, because Bohachuk, to me, is a higher volume puncher. Maybe not as accurate, but we've seen, at least in the Brian Mendoza fight, we've seen him at least throw 800 punches in that fight. So with that being said, I think Bohachuk just needs to pace himself to a point where let Ortiz blow his load, you know, guard up, you know, and counter at times, but don't go crazy early on. Stretch it out and fight stronger later. Ortiz, on the other hand, I think Ortiz needs to invest into the body like he normally does, and I'm expecting him to do it. You want Bohachuk to drop his hands some, all right? He fights out of high guard. Yes, you can counter him with a good shot here or there and, you know, catch him in between the guard, but invest into the body. You know, you want to slow him down. And hopefully, if Ortiz can make him fight on the back foot, again, I don't know if Bohachuk can fight well on the back foot, because I haven't really seen him doing it. I've seen him be so dominant even in his knockout loss. So I think that's what he needs to apply. Another thing, and before I give you, you know, my final prediction, these guys got experience in fighting each other. All right. I saw on their press conference, they've sparred a good amount of rounds without really knowing that they may fight, because they were fighting in two different divisions. They have been in the gym together and they've sparred a good amount of rounds, a lot of rounds against each other. So with that being said, they are familiar. So we can't base everything off what we've seen in the past, because these guys have done their thing in two different divisions. There have been health issues with Ortiz. They do have experience in sparring with each other, so they know how each other fights. And Bohachuk, we've only seen him fight in dominant fights. We never really seen him fight on the back foot like that. Virgil, we have. So it's very tough to call this fight. I'm going for Ortiz. Okay, I just think overall, I think he has more gifts. I think he has more strengths here than Bohachuk. I think if Bohachuk took some of the approach that if he were able to mix a little bit of what Maurice Hooker did in their fight with Ortiz and Velasquez, and I say that because Maurice has similar height, rangier, longer arms. If Bohachuk just relied on fighting behind the jab more and keeping distance and throwing right hands from the outside, I think if he did more of that while looking for counterpuncher opportunities like the way Velasquez did, if he were to do both, I think he would have a lot of success and I think he would win instead of just relying strictly off volume, because his volume is going to lead to him getting countered. You know what I mean? So if he was to take the strengths of both of those two past opponents of Virgil, I think he would have a good chance of winning this. But again, Bohachuk relies a lot on his volume and his pressure. And I think Ortiz is going to counter with some heavy shots. I think Ortiz is going to attack the body consistently. And I think Ortiz is just going to do enough to win this fight. I think there's a possibility of a stoppage from both guys because of the power they have. I think if there is a stoppage, it won't be an early one. I think both guys will go and drag it out into the later rounds. I'm not expecting a stoppage any earlier than the 9th round from both. But this might be Virgil's first decision win. I'm expecting him to win, so I think it could be a decision win. But I also think this is a 50-50 fight, and this is part of the reason why I'm not placing any bets this weekend. Just too many unknowns. And I think this fight is going to answer a lot of questions for the next opponent, whether it's Crawford, or whoever, So with that being said, I got Virgil Ortiz winning this fight. All right. No bets will be placed, but I think he's going to win either by late stoppage, championship round stoppage, or on a close decision, But it can go either way. This is a 50-50 fight. Very good fight. Can't wait to call it this weekend. Make sure you be here. Make sure you subscribe. Hit the thumbs up. I love the fight. You guys will love it too on Saturday. I'll see you guys then. Peace.